at the Academy today to see the 87th cadets here become sworn officers. I'll get the signal to move that. A very exciting day. It's the second time I've been able to do this since I've been the Minister for Police and to join the Commissioner for Police, Grant Stevens. But I'm also here with Balian Frederick, who is one of our very first graduate who has come through the new program that we have been running at Thebarton Senior College, which is a project championed by the Commissioner, but also Eva Canastori, who is the Principal of Thebarton Senior College. And we also have, of course, from Roman Mitchell College, the Principal here today, because Roman Mitchell College is going to be the next school to offer that same pathway for Year 12 students on a VET, so vocational education and training basis, the opportunity in Year 12 to start a pathway through to being where Balian is today and chucking the hat in the air and becoming a sworn SAPOL officer, which of course is what we're trying to do in terms of the efforts we have made around recruiting in the last 4 years, and we are starting to see that really pick up speed now. About 4 years ago, the number of applications in South Australia we had to join SAPOL was just short of 1,000. This most recent period, we have topped 3,000. We have tripled the number of people applying to be a SAPOL officer. And the most recent data that I was able to release, thank you to the Commissioner and SAPOL, showed that the number of people retiring and resigning from SAPOL has halved in the last 12 months. A 52% reduction in serving officers who are choosing to resign or retire, which means we are doing a better job at keeping those experienced SAPOL officers, but we're also doing a better job at recruiting people like Balian, encouraging them to put their hand up, doing a better job, I think, of inspiring them and getting them to see, the importance of the role, but the value of the role as a career of being a police officer, that those people who are motivated to be a police officer, and I see it in education with teachers, they are people who are motivated to do good. They are people who are motivated to give back. They want to do that, and I think the investment that this state government has been making in SAPOL, not just in terms of the extra 326 sworn officers that we are committed to, not just the extra 100 that we have committed to post the Royal Commission into Domestic and Family Violence, but also the record budget we delivered just last year in terms of recruiting, but also upgrading equipment and the work the Attorney General has been doing in terms of giving our serving officers the stronger kind of laws they need to be out there at deterring crime, investigating and taking action when a crime is committed. So this is obviously a special day for all those from this course 87, who are graduating today, and it's an honour to be here as the Police Minister, but it's also a great occasion to acknowledge the work of SAPOL and Thebarton Senior College and Balian on a new pathway through, which I think will encourage more young South Australians who perhaps hadn't considered a career in SAPOL before to put their hand up for that. And I'm hopeful that what we see in future graduations like this one is more people like Balian who've come through a pathway like the one that we have created here at Thebarton Senior College. I'll hand over now to the Commissioner, and then I think we're going to hear from Balian, and then the Commissioner and I are happy to take any questions you might have on this or any other matters.
Thanks, Minister. Once again, a terrific day for South Australia Police, where we see 23 new police officers marching out of the Academy to commence their operational policing careers, and with Balian being one of those. Balian, our first successful recruit through our Pathways to Policing program, a program that kicked off as a pilot with Thebarton Senior College, and it's one we're hopeful that we can expand right across the state to provide a mechanism for young people who are thinking about a career in law enforcement to build those skills and qualities through their final years of secondary education and come ready to go for the Police Academy. As the Minister said, our efforts over the last 4 years to recruit and retain police and police staff is paying dividends. There's been substantial investment to upgrade our recruit selection processes, our training processes, our marketing, and also to trial new initiatives like the Pathways to Policing. So it's great to have Balian here today as an example of one of those success stories, and we're hopeful for many more coming through that program to achieve the same outcomes that Balian has today. So I'll hand over to Balian to say a few words.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to say how honoured I am to be here today, and all the hard work that everyone around me, and myself included, have put in to get to this point. Being a part of the Thebarton program was an amazing experience. I got to discover everything about SAPOL and know that it is the career that I wanted to go into. I discovered and talked to a lot of people in the job and out of the job, and it just gave me a valuable insight into what policing is and how I can help the community. It also developed my skills and everything around the culture of policing, including my integrity and courage, due to the work I did in the Theberton program. Now, thank you very much for being here today. I really appreciate it, for being here for the first member of the graduation of the course. If anyone would like to ask me any questions about it, I'd be happy to answer anything.
What do you want to do with the police?
Honestly, I'm not too sure. I joined to just be a general duties police officer because that is the main part of the job, and that's what I feel encapsulates the job of policing very well. I am very interested in forensics though, and I feel like that would be a valuable and fun job to do. Just catching the criminals that way would be very good, but it's not all about that. For the start, I just want to be as good as I can on the road, do general duties and gain all the valuable experience I can at the start. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here, everyone. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Any questions for the Commissioner or me, or Eva is here, the principal of Theberton School too, if you had any questions about that. Otherwise, and Tony, of course, from Roma Mitchell, our next school officer. Okay, all right. Hannah, yes, no, okay, all good. Yes. That's right, that's right. There's a couple of things I'd say about that. South Australia has given its in-principle agreement to the federal government's buyback scheme. I've been involved in discussions around that, as has the Commissioner, as Commissioner and Police Minister, with other Commissioners and Police Ministers around Australia. I think the laws that were passed essentially give the federal government the framework they need to do a buyback. As I said, we've given our in-principle agreement to that, but there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. We have committed here in South Australia to consultation with stakeholders, including, for instance, sporting shooters, to make sure they get a chance to be heard. As someone who grew up on a farm myself, I understand the role that firearms play for primary producers and sporting shooters and things like that, and we need to make sure that we give those important stakeholders the opportunity to be heard as well. There is also, of course, going to need to be decisions made by National Cabinet as well, and I can't preempt what those decisions would be. But the conversations the Commissioner and I have been involved in, I've been at pains to make sure people understand the complexity that sits behind the buyback, which is not necessarily as simple as it might sound on the face of it. An example is around ammunition. So the law in South Australia, and I would imagine it's the law in other parts of Australia too, that if you have a firearm and you own ammunition for that firearm, and then for whatever reason you no longer have the firearm, whether you've disposed of it or whether it's part of a buyback, you're then legally not able to own the ammunition either. And that's currently not part of the 50-50 split on the buyback. So I'm conscious that although it has our in-principle support, I want to be very clear around what the total cost for South Australia would be, because we are talking about tens of millions of dollars, there's no doubt about that. So we've got a bit of clarity on that. I want to make sure that all the key stakeholders get a chance to be heard. And then, of course, as you know, Hannah, the other complexity in here for South Australia is that we are about 33 days or something like that away from caretaker mode. So I think it'll ultimately be a decision for whoever forms government on March the 21st, but we are playing a constructive role, I think, within this.
What's your feeling about protecting the guns here in South Australia? The laws, is that what you're
Wasn't the advice I've had from the Commissioner, and I've having only been the Police Minister now for a few months, I've tried to get across the ins and outs of our gun laws very quickly, and I can say with my hand on my heart, we have some of the strongest gun laws in Australia. There's some work that SAPOL do which is excellent around making decisions about who gets access to a firearm and who doesn't. So listen, I think the two sort of conversations that we are having as a nation post-Bondi around the hate speech things and the firearms are two conversations that we need to have. I think we need to just proceed cautiously though, because there are already clear differences in the existing firearms laws between states and territories, and I think South Australia's do compare very well around the nation. So that's not to say though that this shouldn't be used as an opportunity to have a look at that again. I think one of the things that is often left out of this conversation that I know the Commissioner and I are very keen on is around better intelligence sharing with federal agencies. If we have a look at Bondi specifically, decisions that the firearms branch from SAPOL have to make when someone applies for a firearm around whether or not they are a fit and proper person to hold a firearms licence, and then potentially whether or not that person lives with someone who should not have access, and that should have a bearing on whether the other person gets a licence at all. Those decisions are only made based on the best intelligence that SAPOL has. And if there is a way through this scheme to improve intelligence sharing from federal agencies to state law enforcement, so decisions can be made with more information at hand when a decision is made to either give someone a licence or say no, that is a very, very important thing, and that is absolutely a vital part of what is being discussed nationally around gun buybacks, I think. But we don't want to in a roundabout way, to get back to your first question, sorry Hannah, but to talk about those shootings that we had this week, I think we do need to be careful too around the purpose of the buyback and those who might be using illegal firearms on the grey market, I think we call it. The buyback, of course, is there to enable those who are coming to either of their own volition hand their firearms back to be compensated, or if there were a law change to do that under the law. I think, unfortunately, it's unlikely that we have a scenario where those who may have secured a firearm on the grey market are then voluntarily coming in as part of a buyback to give their firearm back. They are two separate issues. Doesn't mean that the national conversation isn't an important one, but I don't want people to conflate the two things and think that that's what the buyback is about.
Similar question. First of all, what's your reaction to this week of shootings and terrifying shootings?
Without diminishing the seriousness of the offences that have been committed, it's important to recognise that none of these incidents are connected, and it's our firm belief that the people involved are known to each other. We have arrested 2 people for the shooting that saw 2 people being injured. We do unfortunately see incidents of shootings occurring within South Australia. Invariably, it's people who have grudges, whether it be as a result of rival gang participation, illicit drugs, with firearms being discharged against houses and cars. It does happen. And like I say, without diminishing the significance of the events over the last 48 to 36 hours, these are not connected, and it is more of a coincidence that we've had so many in such close proximity. And I know that this has an impact on people's sense of safety in the community, but I would encourage people not to be overly concerned about this in terms of this is not a new trend we're seeing. This is 3 random incidents that have just happened to happen in close proximity to each other.
The shooting at Fred Park last week, is the involvement of CSG and 05 being investigated?
We are certainly looking at all aspects like that, and as I said, we attribute some of these shooting incidents to rival gang activity, and we have a dedicated task force, the Youth and Street Gangs Task Force, that are charged with that part of the investigation.
Does a member of one of those gangs?
Sorry?
Does a member of one of those gangs?
I won't speculate. I'll go so far as to say the Youth and Street Gangs Task Force is investigating, along with our Serious Firearms Investigation Branch. So we have the right resources investigating the causes that relate to these shooting events.
What's your take on federal laws that pass? Do we need to have some laws here?
As the Minister said, South Australian gun laws stack up admirably against every other jurisdiction in Australia. As a result of their decisions in New South Wales, it's arguable that they have the most stringent gun laws now in South Australia. But across a range of comparisons, South Australia still stands in good stead. Our responsibility as a policing agency is to provide advice to the government so the government can make an informed decision in relation to changes to South Australian legislation, the extent to which we will participate in a buyback, and any commitments we might wish to make as a state in relation to changes to the National Firearms Agreement. So it is a government decision, but that decision should be based on sound advice, and that's our responsibility.
A video that's surfaced, involves an assault on the Google line. I think the also makes interchange. And it's understood that they involved members from CSG and 051. Are you aware of that?
I have heard a little bit about that. I don't have the specifics. And we don't have a report that I'm aware of at the moment that would enable us to investigate. So anybody who has information about a recent incident on the rail line, we'd encourage them to make contact with police. And if anyone is the victim of an assault, they should be making contact and reporting that to police.
Is that concern seeing that they just flood onto this, like it's public space, there's people travelling?
Well, and any public place where people who have grudges against each other, whether it be gang related or for whatever reason, violence in a public place is unacceptable, particularly when it puts other people at risk or causes fear amongst people who are simply going about their daily activities. I will say though that the new life laws have seen all of our rail corridors being declared, which means police officers on the transit routes, including rail lines, have the power to randomly search people for weapons, and we'll be doing that right across the transport network from those declarations having been made just about a week ago.
There's new stats that show, there's some people that have multiple guns, tens of thousands of people in South Australia bought arms. That's not part of the federal laws, but is that okay? Should we have people that have these multiple guns and so many of them in the state?
So South Australia has somewhere in the vicinity of 62,000 licensed firearms owners, and some of those, I think in the order of about 40%, own more than one firearm. We run a test when someone applies for permission to acquire a new firearm. We run a test which is called the reasonable use test, where we determine that what they are seeking to acquire is reasonable in the circumstances. It's not a foolproof test, but it does provide an opportunity for us to examine the reason a person is applying to purchase a new firearm. It is a matter for government as to whether they want to impose a cap on the number of firearms that South Australians are permitted to own under law, and decisions made by government will impact on what might happen with a buyback as well.
What would you advise the government?
It's not my position to make recommendations to the government in relation to changes to firearms legislation unless I identify a significant flaw in our existing legislation. I don't believe there are flaws in our current legislation, but that doesn't mean there aren't opportunities to make changes that might improve public safety, and that is a government and cabinet discussion based on advice we provide.
Do you think there should be a discussion around multiple licences?
Oh, look, I can virtually assure that our government will be having those conversations based on movements we've seen in other jurisdictions, and that would be a sensible conversation to have. The outcome of that conversation will be a matter for government, and it should be based on a proper consideration of all of the circumstances and the implications for South Australia.
With the tour down under, we're obviously seeing a bit of an influx of cyclists on
Yeah.
the roads. Vision has emerged recently of essentially a car overtaking a group of cyclists quite dangerously. I guess what's your advice to road users at this time of year?
Look, we do have Operation Safe Cycling running at the moment, which is encouraging road users, whether you be on a bike, motorcycle or a car or a pedestrian, just to be alert to the fact that we do have a significant number of cyclists using our road during this tour down under period, and we also have the return to school coming up next week. I want to remind people that we have legislation in South Australia that requires drivers of vehicles to stay 1 metre away from cyclists, and there's one thing when someone overlooks their responsibilities and makes that mistake, but drivers who deliberately swerve in towards cyclists need to stop and think about the consequences, not just for the cyclists but for themselves as well, because if we identify them doing that and they cause an injury, then their life will change materially as well as the cyclist they've injured. So it's a time for tolerance, patience and consideration for everyone who's using the road. You might not like cyclists on the road, but recognise what it means for the state to have the tour down under here and the benefits that we all derive from having such a significant event running in South Australia, right across the regions.
Just on an overnight job, a driver arrested after crashing into a police station gates at Salisbury. Just give us
We'd encourage people to use the front door instead of the back gate. You can't be surprised that someone who's blown almost 4 times over the limit doesn't have the capacity as a driver to negotiate safely a roadway and an entrance to a car park. That person obviously has been arrested, was remanded in custody and has, I believe, appeared in court today. We'll let that play out, but the vehicle's been impounded and they have some significant charges facing them now.
One last topic. E-bikes.
Sorry?
E-bikes.
E-bikes.
Do you you think police need more powers to regulate e-scooters?
Look, I think the e-scooters and e-bike legislation, on the face of it, appears fit for purpose. The challenge we have is the way people are using these devices in the community. One aspect is the fact that people are making alterations to their e-bikes and e-scooters that enable them to travel at significantly greater speeds than is allowed by the legislation. And we're seeing a lot of, and this is something that particularly worries me, is the number of young people who are using our road network on electric motorbikes and electric bikes in a way that puts them at significant risk without any accountability. And their willingness to evade police is another concerning factor. We don't want to contribute to a situation where we see young people suffering serious injuries or death because they were playing games with police cars. So it is a challenge for us in terms of enforcement, but I don't think at this point the legislation requires any amendment. What we need to see is a greater observance of the laws that are in place. And if I can say so, we need parents to step up and make sure that their kids are doing the right thing when they leave home on an electric scooter or an e-bike, and make sure that those devices haven't been altered so they can exceed the prescribed speed limits.
Thanks, everyone.
No worries. Thanks a lot. See you.